artificial intelligence. It's poised to be, well, probably the single most disruptive influence on radiology, and frankly on a lot of medicine, in decades. And when we say disruption, we don't just mean, improving what's already there. Think back to CT or MRI.
Right.
Those were huge technological leaps, of course, but they were still sort of natural extensions of how radiologists worked. The tools got better, but the job itself, it stayed fundamentally the same.
That is the core difference here, absolutely. AI, and specifically deep learning, it offers a kind of change that goes so far beyond that. We're talking about automating image segmentation, evaluating quality, selecting protocols.
Even generating preliminary reports.
Potentially, yes. Yeah. And that capability, it fundamentally alters how the work is done and maybe even who does it.
That potential for revolutionary benefit, but also the unprecedented risk. I mean, we're putting autonomous systems into life-critical fields. That's why we're doing this deep dive today.
Yeah.
You sent over this massive, really dense, but incredibly important document, the Comprehensive Multi-Society Statement, a joint effort from the ACR, CAR, ESR, RANZCR, and the RSNA.
It's essentially a global blueprint for how to adopt AI in radiology safely. And our mission today is really to crack this open for you, to give you the tools to winnow the wheat from the chaff, as they say.
Okay.
You need to be able to critically evaluate these AI claims, to separate the products that are safe and effective from the ones that are, just unhelpful or, even worse, potentially harmful.
All right, so let's unpack that right away.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people listening, computer assistance isn't new at all. I mean, radiology has used CADE and CADX, computer-aided detection and diagnosis, for what, 30 years?
At least.
So what makes modern AI, the stuff we're talking about now, so fundamentally different from those older CAD systems?
It all boils down to how the system learns, how it identifies features. Traditional CAD systems, they worked on what you'd call classical machine learning. They were rule-based.
Meaning a human had to program in all the rules.
Exactly. A human expert, a programmer, a data scientist, had to sit down and manually predefine every single relevant feature. If you wanted it to spot a nodule, you had to explicitly tell it, look for something round, between 5 and 10 millimeters, with a spiculated texture.
So if the programmer missed a key feature or a new presentation of a disease came along, the system was just blind to it.
Completely blind. That whole process is called handcrafted feature engineering, and it really limited their adaptability. They were rigid.
And this is where deep learning completely changes the game. It basically cuts that human programmer out of the feature selection loop, right?
It does. Modern AI, deep learning especially, it lets the algorithm automatically learn what's relevant directly from just massive data sets. You don't tell it to look for spiculated margins.
You just show it a million pictures.
You feed it a million examples of lung nodules and a million non-nodules, and the system itself figures out what features reliably tell them apart. It's inductive, not deductive.
It sounds like the difference between teaching a kid to identify a bird by listing every single bird characteristic versus just pointing at a robin and saying, that's a bird. Do that enough times and they get it.
That's a perfect analogy. And because these models learn intrinsically, they can, in principle, just keep getting better as they see more and more real-world data. And that power, that shift, is what allows AI to move beyond simple detection into true automation. And that's the source of all the promise and all the risk.
So we have this incredible technology. But before we even get into, buying or building these tools, the statement is very clear. We have to establish the ethical guardrails first.
They ground it in the 4 core principles of medicine: beneficence, non-maleficence, autonomy, and justice.
Doing good, doing no harm.
Right. Autonomy. So patients still have the right to informed consent. And justice, which is about ensuring fairness.
And the idea of justice, fairness, is where the whole conversation about bias gets really, really important.
It's critical. A core ethical message here is that the ultimate accountability, it always rests with the human. The designer, the operator, the hospital. The AI isn't responsible. The people using it are.
And a huge part of that responsibility is managing bias. Because these AI systems can unintentionally just perpetuate or even amplify existing biases in healthcare if the data they're trained on isn't right.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's break down the 4 types of bias the statement identifies.
Yeah. Because
it shows just how many ways this can go wrong.
The first one, the one people talk about most, is data bias. This is when your training data overrepresents or underrepresents certain groups: gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status.
So if you train your breast cancer AI mostly on images from white women,
it may be less accurate for Black or Asian women. Precisely. It can lead to real harm in underserved groups. The second is clinical confounding bias. This one is subtle. This is when the AI learns to focus on a related attribute, not the primary disease. For instance, an AI trained to detect pneumonia might learn to associate it with a chest tube on the image because so many severe pneumonia patients have them.
Wow. So it sees a chest tube and just flags pneumonia, even if the lung is clear?
It's learning the clinical environment, not the pathology. It's confusing correlation with causation.
That's fascinating.
The third is technical bias. This comes from, subtle, non-clinical stuff, different scanner manufacturers, different imaging protocols. An AI trained on Siemens CTs might struggle with images from a GE scanner because of tiny differences in noise or reconstruction.
And the fourth one, which to me seems the most insidious because it's about human psychology, is automation bias.
Right. This is our tendency as humans to just favor the AI's recommendation, to over-rely on it, ignoring our own judgment, especially when we're tired.
So a radiologist is swamped, the AI says an image is clear, and they might just stop looking as carefully.
Or the reverse. The AI flags something, and they accept it without a critical look. It increases the risk of systemic error.
So that transition from the lab to the clinic is where everything gets tested. A developer can't just build something because the tech is cool. It has to meet a real clinical need. But how do we, as purchasers, actually verify their claims?
Well, regulators like the FDA or the EMA, they have to demand extensive, transparent information. They need to know the specific use case, the performance metrics, and not just the top-line number, the study design, everything.
And the statement really hammers this point. We have to move beyond those simple summary accuracy figures. Everyone loves to report their AUC, their area under the curve.
Yeah.
But we know that can hide a lot of problems.
It can, which is why regulators should be pushing for things like model cards or system cards. This is a move toward radical transparency. A model card isn't just the flashy performance report. It's an in-depth analysis that explicitly reports the system's limitations, its known errors, its biases.
So it's basically forcing the developer to say, here's where our product fails.
Exactly. A system might have a great overall AUC, but the model card might reveal that its performance tanks for pediatric patients or for images from an older scanner. That transparency is absolutely crucial for safety.
I see. And it's not a one-and-done approval either. The statement is clear that regulation has to continue after the product is on the market.
Absolutely. They need to have a clear post-market quality assurance plan to deal with things like performance degradation or what's called concept drift.
So getting FDA approval is one thing, but making it work in your hospital, with your patients and your scanners, that requires local validation. And this is where a lot of institutions seem to drop the ball.
It's a dangerous assumption to think approval guarantees utility. And first, you have to talk about cost. The license is just a small part. You have to factor in IT work, training, infrastructure.
Right.
But beyond the money, it's about local risk. Your error rate in your reading room may be completely different from what the vendor reported in their trials.
Because my patients are different, my scanners are different.
Your disease prevalence is different, all of it. And if you don't do local validation to understand that difference, you're flying blind.
And part of that validation is managing the human element. We talked about automation bias. What are the big psychological hurdles our radiologists are going to face?
There are two major pitfalls we see in human-AI interaction. The first, as you said, is automation bias, over-reliance. The better the AI is, the more we trust it, and the more likely we are to accept an incorrect result just because it's usually right.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
High accuracy actually breeds human complacency.
It's a known risk. But the opposite is also a problem. The second pitfall is algorithmic aversion, under-reliance.
Rejecting good information just because it came from an AI. Why would anyone do that?
It's about trust. A study showed physicians rated the exact same information on a chest X-ray as less reliable when they were told it came from an AI expert versus a human expert. If a radiologist sees a few early false positives, a few mistakes, they might just start overriding the AI even when it's right.
So that early experience with the tool is everything. Okay, so to deal with this, the statement lays out a 5-step process for local evaluation before you roll it out.
Right. Step 1, review model accuracy, but you have to focus on user-facing metrics. That means looking at positive predictive value, PPV, and negative predictive value, NPV, not just the overall accuracy.
Why are those two more important for the user?
Because they directly translate to the user experience. NPV tells you if you can trust a negative result. PPV tells you how likely a positive flag is to be real. If your PPV is low, the AI is crying wolf all the time.
Lots of false positives.
And the radiologist will get frustrated, develop that algorithmic aversion we talked about, and just stop using the tool. Low PPV leads directly to user rejection.
Got it. What's step 2?
Step 2 is calculate the optimized enhanced detection rate, or EDR. This is a real number that shows you the actual clinical improvement, the increase in sensitivity you get when you combine the human and the AI. Is the team better than the human alone?
Step 3 sounds a bit more subjective. Identify wow cases.
It is, but it's so powerful for getting people on board. These are the cases that just clearly show the AI's value. A case where the radiologist was about to miss something critical and the AI caught it. Those stories prove the model's worth and break down skepticism.
And step 4 gets back to the failure.
Yes. Categorize model pitfalls. You have to know what kind of mistakes it makes. Does it struggle with the lung apex? With very subtle findings. Knowing that helps radiologists mitigate automation bias because they know where to be extra careful.
Okay, finally, step 5. Summarize and decide.
This is where you make a practical call. The statement gives a great example. Say you buy a pneumothorax detection AI. Its PPV might be too low across your whole patient population, too many false alarms.
So you get user burnout.
Right. But what if you only use it on inpatient chest x-rays where the prevalence of pneumothorax is much higher? Suddenly your PPV shoots way up, the false positives drop, and your radiologists find it incredibly useful. You're adapting the tool to your local reality.
That's a perfect example. So we bought it, we validated it, but we know it's not static. Why is performance monitoring an ongoing, constant necessity?
Because AI performance will degrade over time.
Yeah.
The technical term is concept drift. The day you deploy the model, your local data starts to change. You get new equipment, you update software, your patient demographics shift.
And the model was trained on the old data, the old concepts.
Exactly. End users have to anticipate this decline. It's why the FDA has what's called the total product lifecycle approach. They know the model has to be continuously assessed and maybe even retrained.
So how do you actually monitor this drift in real time?
Well, there are two main ways. The first is periodic monitoring. You reevaluate performance on a new data set every year, say. The problem is time lag. You might not know your system has a catastrophic failure for 6 months.
Not ideal.
Not at all. The better strategy is continuous monitoring. This is essential. You're collecting real-time data on performance, tracking all the metadata, the scanner, the protocol, the patient demographics, and special data registries. This lets you spot a problem caused by a single machine or a protocol change almost immediately.
And that kind of robust monitoring is what really separates where we are now from where we're going. Let's finish up by talking about those 2 future states for AI.
Right. Currently, we are almost entirely in the world of augmentative AI. The radiologist and the system collaborate. The human is always the final decider. And the main challenge is managing those human biases over and under reliance.
But the future everyone talks about
Is autonomous AI, a system that operates with no direct human oversight, making independent diagnostic decisions. For that to happen, the performance standards have to be, well, drastically higher than anything we have today.
And the continuous monitoring system has to be flawless.
Absolutely flawless. You need stringent, constant testing and a kill switch, a clear process to immediately disable the system if something goes wrong. Robust, continuous monitoring is a non-negotiable prerequisite for any kind of safe, autonomous AI.
This whole statement really boils down to safety first, doesn't it? The goal can't just be to get AI out there. It has to be getting it out there safely for patient benefit.
That's the core mandate. Commercial interests are important. They drive innovation, but they can never, ever take priority over the well-being of patients and society.
So what does this all mean for you listening? The success of AI in your practice is going to be less about whether the technology works in a lab and much more about how you manage the human side of it, the biases, the trust, and how you prepare for the fact that its performance will inevitably change over time. So here's a final thought. The ethical mandate says AI must respect human rights and ensure fairness, including justice in how we distribute care. So consider this. If we become reliant on AI to fill gaps in subspecialty coverage in poorer areas because it's cheaper than training and deploying human experts, does that reliance then ethically change how we decide to allocate resources for training those human specialists in the future? Something to mull over.